Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where in the world you're tuning in. And I just wanted to say a big thanks to Steve and Discovery for inviting me to be here today and to share our work and our story at Taking It Global. And you can see on the screen here, there's a link to the archives and also a link, a few people have been asking in the chat, to the certificate. So you should be able to have both those links there, and I'm sure they'll be on the site afterwards too. So today I'm really excited to share a little bit of our story and adventure at Taking It Global, and especially kind of investigate this idea of what makes a future-friendly school, looking at these themes and topics of technology, global citizenship, and student voice, and really looking through the lens of the last 12 years of our work at Taking It Global to really try to help bring these ideas to life in our communities and in schools around the world. And you can see at the bottom of this slide, I have my Twitter handle and also Tiged's Twitter handle. Feel free to send me a note on Twitter if you have a question, and at the end of the session I'll try to pick those up, and of course I'll try to monitor the chat at the end too. So the story that I'm sharing with you begins in 1984. I was 2.5 years old and my parents bought us a Commodore 64. And for me that really kicked off this revolution, this blurring of the consumer and creator. You know, Time magazine a few years ago had you as the person of the year, and I think it really began back in this time when you could see the boxes of Fisher-Price software there on the shelf, but my dad also taught me at a really young age how to program BASIC, and that kind of got me hooked in being creative and innovative and starting to think about what kind of ideas I could make possible because I started to quickly learn that I could program and create anything I wanted. And today, much later, this is my 11-month-old son, Jean-Paul. He's not on the computer very much, but he loves looking at himself. And you know, back then it wasn't as common. I had 1 or 2 friends who had a Commodore 64, although I think it was only recently replaced in the Guinness Book of World Records as the best-selling computer of all time. But today, it's much more common that this access to technology is beginning at such a young age. And I think we have to, we can be excited about the opportunities that's going to create for some of these future skills for young people. And for me, that combined with a very early passion of entrepreneurship. I remember one of my first businesses was a nature sale, picking all the flowers and leaves and things out of my mom's garden and selling them on a bench at the front table of our driveway. And it's because at one point someone had said to me, well, you know, you can choose one thing at the store, but if you can figure out a way to make money, you can buy anything you want. And so I thought, you know, what could I sell? And I learned quickly about the concept of sustainability. You know, the flowers were great, but the next day there was nothing left for the nature sale. No one wanted to buy grass. And that quickly led me to my first real business, I guess, or the first one I really tried. It was a friend of mine named Sean and I both had the Commodore 64. And so we decided, well, we were at a Kmart one day looking at the rack of software programs, recipe management programs, financial management programs, all kinds of software that people had created. And at that time, we both heard of this new invention for the Commodore called a modem. And the only problem was a modem was $500 or $600, pretty expensive to get. And we really wanted to be able to buy our own modems that we could connect our computers together and kind of collaborate and start maybe a bulletin board system that we had just heard about. We were probably in grade 5 at the time. And so we spent months line by line programming this software. The idea we had was to help people organize and catalog their collections of sports cards. And we also wanted to have a very official name. My aunt was kind of our business mentor and wanted to make us a stamp. My friend's name was Sean and my name was Michael, so we thought we'd call it S&M Enterprises. But our parents said it wasn't that I was any better than Sean. My name should go first, they said. And so M&S Enterprises was born. We had a stamp, we had a flyer, and we went all over the city posting flyers and trying to get people to buy our software. And unfortunately, not one person ever called. So either it rained and all the flyers died, or we hadn't really done our market research. But there's a great quote from Thomas Edison: "I haven't failed. I found 10,000 ways that don't work." And although I wasn't as optimistic about it back then, our parents still encouraged and supported us and got us each our own modem anyways. But I think this kind of valuable lesson, this early experience with failure, is something that really has carried with me. And in fact, when you look at programming, I'm sure for some of you who have experience with it, you're constantly failing. And I think that that idea, that the critical thinking skills and creativity that builds and kind of resilience that builds is really key skills. And I think that's why I kind of support SEYMOUR PAPERT's, you know, recommendation and many others that, you know, every student should learn programming. And in fact, there's a whole movement called code.org. I'm sure some of you saw last month that launched with people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, a series of videos trying to really inspire all of our schools to teach programming. And so with the modem, the bulletin board systems really kicked off the beginning of online community. It was almost like the internet with 2 different people. You know, I would run down in the basement into when I heard someone calling my bulletin board, and we'd play a game together, we'd share a file, we'd chat. And then quickly that evolved into America Online and CompuServe, sending out discs and CDs all around the world. And I remember my friend's dad, who had a small business, making the mistake of giving the two of us in grade 7 the CompuServe CD along with his Visa card and asking us if we could help figure out this web thing he'd heard so much about. And we discovered this amazing world of websites and HTML and chat rooms. And it was actually around that time in grade 8 when I was asked to do a presentation on a different form of media and advertising. And so my friends and I decided we'd present on this new company called Yahoo that had just launched this idea of selling images and advertising on websites. And so we thought, well, if these guys down in California, a bunch of students there can do it, why can't we? And so we launched our very own website called the Internet Exposed. And it was great because no one knew we were just high school students. I wrote letters to Microsoft and Intel and HP and had some of the world's largest technology companies sending us products to review because they had no idea we were extremely young journalists, and we managed to sell advertising to a few different sites. And that's when I met Don Tapscott. I worked on a project to help him build a website for his book in 1997 called Growing Up Digital, The Rise of the Net Generation. And back then, in 1997, Don was kind of predicting a lot of different changes and impact on different aspects of society for the fact that young people like me were growing up not knowing a world without technology. And he was quickly predicting would also be not knowing a world without the internet, this kind of next generation, even younger than I. And so we kind of became friends. He invited me to speak at his book launch and also kind of agreed to a bit of a mentorship exchange. And he gave me a piece of advice to find other people to collaborate with and really grow my idea. And so one night I was up late in a chat room and connected with a young student in Australia named Michael Heyman. We decided to merge our sites together and grew the Internet Exposed from 1,000 visitors a month in 1996 to 10,000 by 1997. And that grew to 100,000 by 1998. And by 1999, we had one of the largest websites about computers and technology in the world, with over 1 million readers looking at 7 million pages of articles. And no one had any idea we were all students. We were selling advertising to some of the world's largest companies. But we faced a bit of a challenge getting venture capital. I was still in high school, and I had convinced my principal to give me some school credit to be able to work on my own project, half a day every 2 days. Michael moved from Australia to Canada, but we didn't know anything about work visas or incorporating businesses, and so most of the investors just laughed us out of their offices. And so we made the difficult decision in 1999, but a well-timed one, to sell our company to a company down in New York City called Internet.com. And as part of that, we got a lot of media attention, a lot of requests from conferences. These teens sell their company to a company down in the United States. Was invited to a conference called the Business Council down in Florida and got to meet Bill Gates. And he talked a lot about kind of his being nervous speaking as well, and made us all feel very comfortable, but also about some of the global challenges he was excited to address with some of his free time and kind of his interest in philanthropy. And that same month, I was also invited to be on a television show that I never really spent a lot of time watching, but apparently a lot of people do. It was Oprah. And after being on Oprah, and that same month, after being named by Teen People magazine as one of the 20 teens that will change the world, along with people like Beyonce, it really made me think, how was I going to change the world? I had just sold a website that I created about computers. And I was starting to get flooded with emails from young people all over the world who'd seen me on Oprah or read Teen People. They had ideas too, and they were looking for help, mentorship, ideas, support, venture capital. And I happened to be a few weeks later at a reunion of that summer program where I worked with Don Tapscott. And I reconnected with one of my friends named Jennifer, and she was running a program at that time called Girls Are It. It was funded by IBM, and it was all about using social issues as a way to engage young girls in building their technology and STEM skills. And so she was actually helping them create all kinds of amazing websites using social issues as the link. We were kind of brainstorming, what could we do if anything was possible? What kind of a learning environment could exist to support all these young people who were, getting engaged in issues, wanted to take action, wanted to create projects, but didn't seem to have the support. And we looked at the resources that were out there. We saw, Teen People's website. It was very focused on cosmetics and fashion and celebrities. There wasn't really a non-commercial learning and collaboration space on the internet. And so we decided to come up with an organization, a nonprofit, that would launch just that. And we came up with this kind of bold mission of empowering young people to understand and act on the world's greatest challenges. And it took us about a year, but we launched in 2000. So this was in 1999. So we launched by late 2000 the first version of our website, which today we talk about as a social network for social change. But this was years before MySpace or Facebook. And so we just called it an online community focused on our tagline of inspire, inform, and involve, which you might be able to make out in the top left there. And we really look at that as a pathway to action. Our goal in supporting informal learning and now working with teachers around the world and bringing this into classrooms is to help young people and students and everyone get from being inspired to getting more involved in taking action and learning through doing around some of these challenges that we have in the world that could use our attention and support. So since we've launched the site about 12 years ago now, we've had over 40 million people, 40 million learners. We hope that they're coming and gaining from it, creating over 1 million different pieces of content. So, I remember our first days, we kind of hunkered down in a basement with about 10 of us helping to start our organization. We did the research for the first 1,000 organizations that we'd populated in our database. Now we've got over 25,000 nonprofit organizations listed around the world. So we've had amazing contributions from young people, from teachers and schools all across the planet. Something I'm most proud of is that back in 2005, we built a crowdsourced translation platform that allowed anyone in any country and language to help translate our site. And we fully launched it in 13 languages, including Arabic, Russian, Chinese, simplified Chinese, and Swahili. But also we've got dozens of teams who've gotten started and are building volunteer capacity to make this site, make some of these resources available in their native tongue. And it's all based on the kind of a crowdsourced platform we built before, things like Unicode and some of these technologies that allowed multilingualism on the internet were very popular. So we really were kind of struggling to make sure we could make it a global community and not just one in English. And so I want to share a little bit of our work and specifically the kind of impact we're hoping to have and bring to schools on students through the lens of 3 different challenges that some of the research has shown that young people are facing. The first one is hope, with only 14% of young people in a study that one of the world's largest ad agencies did a few years ago saying they felt like the world is becoming a better place. And one of the reasons that we found when we asked young people about this is just that in general they feel like the media is quite negative. There's not a lot of positive stories. It's always focusing on the conflict, the controversy, but there's very little that's done to actually showcase many of the positive contributions that young people and students and anyone around the world is making to their communities. It's not as controversial. And so we launched this section called Member Stories that tells hundreds of inspiring leadership stories. And we've now worked with media around the world to highlight and support their efforts to do this so that we can recommend and connect them with and help lift these stories up and have them showcased. And of course, as teachers, you all have an amazing opportunity to use some of these stories to inspire your own students about what's possible. Or if you've got an amazing story of a student leader in your school that's created great change, we'd love for you to share that with us so that we can hold them up as an example and a mentor and a role model for others. And in fact, when we look at some of the research that's out there about some of the challenges facing young people, especially books like Boys Adrift by Dr. Leonard Sachs, he talks about this lack of positive peer role models as one of the key factors creating what he calls this epidemic of underachieving and unmotivated boys. So we think that telling these stories is a great first step. And then we want to make it more accessible. So we want to ensure that people begin to take action and understand what they can do to make a difference. So we created a section called Commit to a Better World. And I'm here at a conference called the Global Issues Network in Costa Rica, where we had an amazing filmmaker yesterday speak to us about just this issue, plastic, and this kind of great plastic island that's floating around the Pacific, and these islands in the Midway that are being destroyed, and animals that are consuming some of the plastic that we waste. So people can go on the site, they can make these commitments. And we found that a lot of people were finding it quite cumbersome to log in and make their commitment every time manually through the site. And so we launched an app called Commit to Act last year. We've had over 25,000 downloads so far. That kind of brings this into the mobile space. So you can log into your device, you can take a photo of the action you did, and schools can even sign up as teams and compete with each other in a friendly competition around sustainability and around positive social action. And what we found is that for every person that takes an action and shares it with their friends on a social network like Facebook or Twitter, over 25 people come back to our site to learn about it. So we think this is a really positive and exciting way to both encourage, showcase, and track actions, but also to bring our friends, our peers, our social networks into our positive actions. So that's kind of a small start, and then what we've also created is a free Creative Commons resource, is a series of guides to action. And these are based on almost a decade of research and stories from members of our community and other organizations, and really trying to create a guide, both a PDF download and a printable workbook and an online interactive resource that guides a student team through the process of creating a sustainable, successful action project. And we've created, most recently, a guide and a focus on mental health in partnership with a Canadian university, one on climate change, one on the Millennium Goals, one on volunteering. So a whole bunch of different guides that you might find useful and that you're free to adapt, copy, reuse to really support student leadership and action. And that really works towards what we have as a strong goal, is building a stronger culture of social innovation around the world. Having young people see a lifelong opportunities, a career as a social innovator. And to do that, we've also had support from the Pearson Foundation in launching a course we call Sprout. And Sprout is an online program that takes a student group through the process of turning an idea they might have or a club they've gotten started into a sustainable social change and social action initiative. And we've now awarded over 20 fellowships with support from Pearson, the Pearson Fellowship for Social Innovation, to some of these students, giving them access to mentorship and funding to actually launch and kick off their ideas. And this kind of hope pathway culminates in a project we have called Youth Movements. And so it's not just all about what we're doing at Taking It Global, but we really want to connect and share and learn from what nonprofits around the world are doing and schools are doing around the world to engage their students. And so the Youth Movements portal brings together over 20 nonprofits and a UN agency and some government support as well to showcase and highlight and map all around the world the different youth-led and youth-serving projects, events, organizations, things that are going on. And we're really trying to also create this knowledge hub to share good practices. And so I invite you to check that out wherever you are in the world to see what kind of local projects might be happening that you may not already be aware of. So that kind of completes this continuum, and we're really hoping that by providing this support, by cultivating action, by showing students what's possible, we can address this challenge of hope. And the second challenge is understanding. This is one that there's been a lot of research on in past years. The newest study was done by a group called World Savvy in San Francisco. Just a few months ago, they released their 2012 Global Competency Survey. And there's a number of statistics they found. This one that our knowledge and awareness of world facts and statistics could be better. And I think that the positive thing is that students don't want it to be that way. 74% of students in that same survey say they wish their courses were more global. 83% believe diversity is an asset, and 80% are curious about world events. So we know that they can be hooked. And we think that the best way to do that, and one of the ways that we're trying to support that to happen, is by making deeper and more meaningful and more personal connections with the students and the countries and the people and the places that we're teaching. And so we try to support that both through online resources like the Global Gallery, which was inspired by a young artist who came up to us at a booth many years ago and said it'd be great if our site had a place to showcase visual art. And so we now have over 25,000 pieces of student and youth created art and expression. This is one of my favorites from a school in Taiwan. It's a great way to learn about other cultures and issues, and we've always got contests running to encourage students to submit and share their work. The resources like Global Issues section, which was actually inspired by a group of 8th grade teachers who wrote to us saying they wanted to have a film festival on global issues and found it really hard to find all the content on our site about one particular issue. And so they helped us design this section, which is now the most popular part of our site, that brings together all the primary source content we have along with the student-created content on over 30 major global issues. So we really want to combine these online resources and tools that we've created also with lesson plans and resources and kind of connections into the classroom to address this challenge of understanding. And we're really excited not just to have partnered with Pearson on the Sprout course, but also some of you may have heard or may be using the My World textbook. It's a new geography and history textbook they created several years ago. And as part of that textbook experience, we've created an entire online community that complements the textbook and exposes students to real-world stories of youth leaders around the world in the countries that they're learning about. So we're hoping that through partnerships like that one, we can actually bring these real stories and real connections, not just onto the internet and onto our community, but also to supplement resources that you're using in your schools. So we're hoping to grow partnerships like that. And the third challenge we're trying to work towards is one of engagement. And this was really touched upon back in the 1990s by Dr. SEYMOUR from MIT, who wrote a book called The Children's Machine, Rethinking School in the Age of the Computer. And one of my favorite quotes from his book, and this is back in 1993, kind of he was making this prediction, was that he said that video games teach children what computers are beginning to teach adults. That some forms of learning are fast-paced, immensely compelling, and rewarding. But not surprisingly, he says, school strikes young people by comparison as slow, boring, and frankly out of touch. We've obviously seen the growth of computers and technology, I think, even outpace that of video games. But he was kind of predicting back then that I think there was this disconnect between how it was being used. And in fact, the US government did some research that started the year after the Commodore 64 came out. They asked graduating grade 12 students 3 questions. Did you find your schoolwork meaningful? Did you find your courses interesting? And do you think what you learned in school will be important later in life? And you can see ever since 1983, the study, and they stopped doing it after 2000, we haven't got more updated numbers, but it kind of shows the challenge created by, I think really what it comes down to is the lack of investment in leadership at a kind of federal level, both in many countries. You know, Canada, I think we face some of the same challenges, but in actually supporting professional development, supporting teachers, and investing in our schools to bring this technology into our classrooms in a way that helped us address this gap. And so this is an American stat, but even in Canada, we work closely with the Canadian Education Association, and they released a study again just a few months ago called "What Did You Do in School Today?" And it showed a drop of intellectual engagement from 82% in grade 5 to only 45% in grade 12. So I think it's a challenge that we're facing in many countries. But I think it's one that there's a lot of promise to address if we can combine the use of technology with kind of meaningful engagement around some of these global challenges which need addressing. And the Partnership for 21st Century Skills released a great report many years ago, the kind of coalition of some of the largest employers and kind of most innovative companies in the world. And they kind of put out this cry for help to the education system, really saying that the education system is potentially facing irrelevance unless, they say, we bridge the gap between how students live and how they learn. And so around 2005, 2006, we were being invited to an increasing number of education conferences. And we were hearing great things from teachers about the potential they saw to use the community we were building and the social network we were building in their classrooms. But we knew we had a lot of work to do to make it easy to use and easy to manage and easy to kind of understand. And so in 2006, we were awarded with a 3-year grant from Microsoft Partners in Learning that actually helped us launch the program that we call TIGED. And so TIGED is an entire section of our site dedicated to helping educators bring the tools and resources and content that we've built up, this amazing global collection of content, into their classrooms. And you can see from the statistics there, we have teachers in over 140 countries on close to 10,000 now from over 3,700 schools, but we'd love to add some zeros to that number and get many more schools involved. So I'm hoping that by sharing some of this with you today, you'll see ways that some of this could maybe support the work you're doing in your schools. And so we've decided to focus our work at Taking It Global around 3 values that we think are really important to drive student engagement in school and offer a lot of potential. And the first value is global citizenship, and really supporting schools and preparing students to be global citizens in this kind of increasingly global and collaborative world. If we look at the workplaces of the future, we're kind of constantly having to communicate, to sell, to collaborate across borders. And we know that students are going to need to do that. But also conferences like this one here, bringing hundreds of students together from around the whole region, working on actually solving some of these challenges are critically important. But there's definitely a lot more work we have to do to help students understand some of these issues so that they feel empowered and engaged to take action on them. And the same study I shared before, World Savvy, showed that only 12% of students feel like they received instruction in school to help them understand the roots, the causes of some of these global issues and challenges. And so we think there's a big gap here, and there's a lot of work that we all can do to really help students better understand why these issues have happened and what they can do to take action on them. And there's a lot of great programs that are out there that are working to achieve just that. One of them is called Global Partners Junior. It's being run by the New York City Global Partners team, connecting middle school students and schools from New York City with school partnerships around the world, and having the students learn from each other's cultures, design projects, and really build kind of a global community and global understanding. Another program is Challenge 2020, bringing together schools all around the United States with partner schools around the world and working to address one of the 20 global challenges that Jean-Francois Richard outlined in his book, High Noon, 20 Global Issues and Challenges in 20 Years to Solve Them. The problem is he wrote the book 5 or 6 years ago, so time is running out. And this is a really innovative program where these one-on-one school collaborations actually work to pick a particular issue and develop a project that addresses it. One of my favorite examples is a school that designed a new mosquito bed net that's more likely to be used by students, and they're now actually moving to patent and share and make that product available as a way to fundraise for their partner school. And so to foster some of these collaborations, we built a community center where you can search and find teachers, classrooms, or schools all around the world based on the subject area, based on the grade level they teach, based on a country you're looking for, or a particular issue you're hoping to bring into your classroom. So we're really trying to foster connections and support collaboration amongst our community, and of course the site is free to join. But we're also looking at how things like games can provide more engaging learning experiences or kind of showcase some of these complex issues. This game called AET was created by our partners at Global Kids and a group called Game Lab many years ago as a way to really try to bring the kind of Sims type experience to global understanding. And so in this game, you choose a game-playing strategy of health, happiness, education, or money. And then you have to survive for 4 years in Haiti and kind of start to understand the types of sacrifices and challenges and the complexity of some of these issues that people and families are facing in trying to survive in some of these places. So, I mean, we think in an ideal world, every student would have a global learning or global exchange experience where they'd actually get to travel to a country and see on their own eyes these challenges that people are facing. But we also want to support online resources that can help to simulate that where that might not be possible. The second value area is student voice, and really trying to encourage and support students in playing a role not just in school systems. And I'm really proud that in my province in Ontario, that the government has actually mandated that there's a student elected trustee on every school board, but also in classrooms. How can we give our students the ability to have more input and influence on what they're learning and how they're embarking on experiences to learn it? And in fact, there was a study done as part of kind of this Alfred Sloan combination study of many different educational studies and resources that showed that the two factors of choice and authenticity most affected students feeling secure, feeling content, and feeling in control of their learning. So we really think that the authenticity comes from the global issues and global citizenship, and the choice comes from designing, we think ideally, project-based learning experiences that give students the opportunity to pick the problem that they want to try to address or solve through their learning, and even come up with their own question and process in addressing it as a group or as a team. But there's also some other resources that are fantastic around student voice. One of my favorites is an organization on the West Coast based in Seattle called Generation Yes. And Yes stands for Youth and Educators Succeeding. A lot of people looking to bring technology into classrooms talk about some of the challenges of using it and help desks and getting support. And so their curriculum, Gen Yes, actually supports and creates an environment of student-powered technology integration. So they've actually created a whole curriculum and resources where students partner with teachers to bring technology into classrooms and to integrate it. And it's really created some amazing stories and outcomes. And so I highly encourage you to have a look at that resource. But there's also the issue of how do students actually propose and direct and create solutions to some of the challenges that they might see. And in Ontario, the government's launched a project called Speak Up. And over the last few years, they've offered over 5,000 grants to student-led ideas and projects in schools across our province that are aimed at improving their school and improving their learning. And I think this idea, whether it's at a mini level at the school or micro level in the classroom or at a school district or school board, could be really a powerful one, having an innovation fund that you can encourage students and teachers to apply to improve their classrooms and their communities. And I know funding is a challenge, and so offering this resource to students and having this kind of friendly competition has really seen some powerful results. And they've got a great Facebook page that tells many of those stories that I encourage you to check out. And we're not just looking at this from kind of at a classroom level and a school board level, but also on a global level. How do we actually influence policy to really ensure that our education systems are reflective of where the world is going and giving students a voice in that? And so we've been proud over the last year to facilitate 2 education fast-forward debates. And we've been lucky to have support from Cisco and Promethean. And we managed to bring together over 20 students around the world. The last one was in January through Cisco's telepresence video conferencing. And we had them video conferenced in to a conference called the Education World Forum with over 100 ministers of education and education policy leaders from all around the world listening to students from around the world, sharing their ideas, their thoughts, their resources, the challenges, what they needed from their leaders in terms of policy change to support more innovation and more student leadership in the education system. So we're excited to also be playing a role in the global policy. And that's not just with Student Voice, but in general, we're a United Nations accredited NGO. And so we've managed to connect several programs, like our Global Encounters video conferencing program, so that students might have a discussion, might create a policy paper, might create a proposal. And then we've actually accredited over the last decade, probably close to 1,000 students and young people around the world to attend real United Nations conferences. So they can bring their ideas, their policies, their brainstorms to world leaders. And we've been really excited to be able to play that role and to get them involved and see how complex some of these decisions are, but also to make sure that their leaders know that students are listening and students are watching and students want to be part of the conversations. So that's really been an exciting opportunity to be able to provide students. And finally, if you're interested in learning a bit more about student voice, I'm actually the leader of the student voice topic on the Microsoft Partners in Learning Network. And so you're welcome to explore some of the blogs or even share your own story. If you've got an amazing story of bringing student voice or launching a student voice project in your classroom, I'd love to hear it. And so please reach out to me afterwards, and I'd love to connect you with this resource and maybe even have you as a guest blogger on the page. And finally, the third value area is environmental stewardship. I think we're all seeing the effects of climate change around the world, and we really want to inspire the next generation to be stewards of the environment, to minimize their impact on the world's resources, and to really think about the different changes and impact that they can have as young people, as students, and as kind of thought leaders in their community and with their families. And what we found is that 75% of students who are taught environmental issues and resources in a more student-directed, more project-based approach reported taking a recent environmentally friendly action. And that's up from just over 40% who are taught using a traditional kind of broadcast method. So we know that bringing some of these more interactive resources and more open, more kind of inquiry-based approaches makes a huge difference in how students actually act as a follow-on to what they learn. And so to try to support some of these more innovative approaches to environmental education, we launched a program with the support from Staples called Tread Lightly, Stepping Towards a Greener Future. And this one had a particular focus in Europe. And so we've got lesson plans and resources not just in English, but in French and Spanish and Italian and Portuguese. It's really trying to get people to reflect, to calculate their kind of carbon footprint, or as we like to say, their ecological footprint, and then to investigate the different actions, the different kind of challenges that they can take on in their school to reduce their impact, to reduce their footprint. And in particular, there's a program Tread Lightly launched called the Low Carbon Lunch, creating a local, organic, and waste-free lunch. This is something that you can all adopt in your schools. We've got a lesson plan and a guide on the site for that one. Speaking of lesson plans and guides, on Together, there's an entire global education resources section where you can search by subject or by global issue area and browse thousands of free educational resources, most of them created by fellow educators like many of you, and some of them created by either Taking It Global or partners to help bring many of these ideas into any subject area. We've really tried hard to adapt and to think about and to customize kind of these different global issues so that you can teach them through, we think, any potential subject. And as part of that resources section, we've created almost 10 what we're calling thematic classrooms. And these are preset learning experiences on all these different issues where with one click you can create an online interactive learning experience for your students that has lesson plans and resources, assignments and activities, and content ready to go and ready to collaborate on. So we have one on mental health, that's the newest one. We've got environmental ones like Deforest Action, which I'll talk about in a second, and Tread Lightly. One on food systems and food security, one on political science, the Orange Revolution, AT, the cost of life. So we've got lesson plans and resources on bringing that game into the classroom, and also two on health issues, one on HIV/AIDS and one on tobacco. And almost all of these have been developed in partnership with universities like Dalhousie on the east coast of Canada, the University of Toronto, or other partners. And we've basically helped them bring their content, their curriculum to life, and also almost every single one of these has some amazing educational games. And I'm particularly proud of the 2 new educational games we launched last year with the focus on mental health, bringing to a lot of difficult issues to the table and helping students engage and learn and reflect about them. And so particularly with the environment, one of my favorite programs is Deforest Action. This program was actually kicked off by a group of schools that heard Jean-Francois Richard give a keynote speech a few years ago and really wanted to take action on one of his issues. And so they kind of banded together, we facilitated some online conversation, and they picked deforestation as the issue they wanted to do something about. And over the last few years, they've engaged tens of thousands of students. They've raised lots of money to support some local education initiatives happening in Borneo. More importantly, they've engaged their students in understanding how some of these issues are happening. The fact that in Borneo, for example, the majority of deforestation is actually illegal. Just that communities can't keep track of it. And they looked at the source of much of the causes of deforestation, and in some cases the unsustainable production of products like palm oil. And so we had students, in primary school sending letters to companies that make products like in Australia, Tim Tams, which have palm oil in them, and hearing back from the CEO and leaders at the company that they're making a commitment to ensure that all their palm oil is sustainable by 2015. Also getting government leaders into the classrooms, talking about passing truth in labeling bill to make sure that we have access to proper labeling on products so we know what's in them and know where it's from. And we think that engaging the students as the ultimate consumers in understanding this and then seeing the power they have as the consumers to impact it is an amazing learning experience and also touches on so many subjects, so many 21st century skills or future skills. There's so much curriculum that so many curriculum connections to make, but also they get a taste of real world change that they can see happening. And one great example of one of the connections is the Earthwatchers program that we launched in partnership with ESRI. And in Earthwatcher, students are assigned a piece of land in Borneo, and they get weekly satellite updates. We've had a satellite mapping company donate their satellite feed, and they can actually report on whether they see an intrusion in their area of the forest. And this is really to support some of the effort of local NGOs on the ground and local partners, because these communities just don't have access to the technology. Someone could be illegally logging in their forest or illegally destroying their forest, and they don't even know about it. So with a program like this, students are able to play a real-world role in monitoring and reporting on illegal deforestation, and we're hoping to bring this project to other countries. I was just in Brazil this week and thinking that they need it there too. And even if it's not illegal, giving students the ability to monitor and really visualize and see it happening week by week is a really powerful way to support a complex issue like that. And so those are the 3 value areas, and for each of them, we've launched online courses that happen over about a 5-week period. They're interactive. They're about an hour a week with lots of reading. And as part of the VirtCon, we're actually offering several of these courses. And so I know Steve posted a tweet about people mentioning TIGED and being entered for one of those courses. But we hope if you're interested in one of these particular values or want to explore it further, you'll give these courses a look. And in particular, we try to make them global learning experiences. So we offer scholarships for educators who don't have the financial resources to attend, especially in developing countries, to ensure that they're really, it's a learning partnership and we can engage people all over the world. And so if you also have financial difficulty with the costs, please register. You can apply for a scholarship through the process and reach out to us. We really love to support you in your learning journey around these issues and really building more of a community of practice around these really important issues in our classrooms. And so when we first launched Taking It Global back in 2000, we were really challenged in our efforts to fundraise. I thought, starting a charity or not-for-profit would be much easier than leading a company and trying to raise venture capital. But in fact, what we found is that it was difficult. And in fact, because the work we were doing was quite pioneering and thinking about social networks and online communities, something many foundations and grant makers didn't have a category for, we had a lot of questions about the impact. How is this any different than just reading a book? What kind of impact does the use and participation and engagement in a community like this actually have on the offline behavior, what people do outside the classroom? And so what we found over 6 years in a study of the impact of thousands of our members is that 66% of young people say they increased their volunteer activity after getting involved in some of these programs. 89% increased their cultural awareness, which probably isn't hard to predict if you realize that this is a community not like Facebook where you connect with your existing friends, but where we're trying to purposely expose you to new connections, new people and places around the world. 68% talked about the fact they had gained or refined skills through participating in some of our programs, our online courses for students or for teachers. And 1 in 2 formed a friendship, which really, I think, speaks to the challenges outlined in books like Boys Adrift, where, kind of pointing out the lack of peer role models. And we really think that building these global virtual friendships can play a huge role in addressing some of these issues that young people are facing around not really having that kind of positive connection. So we think there's a lot of amazing potential. And I'm sure many of you, you're thought leaders in this work. You're already doing this, and you've already seen some of these type of results in your own classrooms. But it's great to have the research that shows. And all of this is available as part of a research study we've posted on our site. And finally, 82% actually report talking more with their friends, with their family, with their community about local and global issues. And so a lot of people have accused young people, not caring about what's going on in the news, not caring about global issues. I think what we've seen is that they just need to be engaged in the right way. And we really feel like, in particular, the middle years, grades 6, 7, 8, are key to doing that. There was a study I remember seeing when we were just starting Taking It Global that showed that, age 14, 15 is actually the peak of interest in all of life in social issues. It kind of goes up to 15 and then down from there. So there's something magical that happens, that could happen, and something magical that doesn't happen, I think, that we could all make happen in our classrooms if we combine these values and develop learning experiences that really engage our students in being able to address some of these issues through their learning. And I know we're facing challenges with assessment, with curriculum, but it can work. It can be customized. We've done a lot of work through our lesson plans and resources, and would love to partner with many of you to customize and really link up these tools, these resources, these programs to curriculum standards, to benchmarks, and we've done a lot of work on trying to do that around the world. And we have teachers doing that as part of professional learning communities in their school districts. And so in terms of what's next and this theme of future-friendly schools, I embarked on a new master's program about 2 years ago called on inclusive design at our design university in Toronto, OCAD University. And I really wanted to focus on education and think about how we could create more inclusive, more engaging learning experiences so that every student was engaged in their learning. And what I've come up with as a way to do that, and what I've been building this global partnership to develop, is a network and a certification for what a future-friendly school looks like. And for the last few months, we've actually been running a user voice process, kind of a global open consultation. It's still up today. You can go and have a look at the website and see how this works, where we've had over 4,000 votes on what the indicators are of a future-friendly school in the 3 value areas outlined. So what does it mean to demonstrate global citizenship in a school? What does authentic student voice look like? How can we measure these things? Because one of the challenges I think a lot of people face and questions we've had over the years is, what is the most authentic level of student voice? How do I measure something like global citizenship in our school? How can we keep track of environmental stewardship? And there's a lot of regional or local groups that have done a great job at that. In Ontario, we have Eco Schools, a really strong network that's created a powerful guide to helping their schools be more environmentally sustainable. But we really saw an opportunity to create a global standard of what it means to be a future-friendly school that's not a fixed standard, but that's going to evolve over the next decades, we hope, with the help of many of you, with schools and educators driving this program forward. And so with this effort, so we've had, I mentioned the 4,000 votes and over 140 new ideas for indicators submitted. And we're going to be spending the next month taking all that input and feedback into account and developing a certification guide for the program, which will launch in August. And we're working to recognize the first 10 schools in each region of the world that participate as our founding schools. And we're really hoping to build a global community that recognizes and showcases the schools that are already doing this, but also in the certification guide, really providing a roadmap to getting involved in some of these programs that doesn't just lift up and promote our programs, but we've met so many amazing organizations over the years, including the ones running this conference here, that have awesome programs that they have a hard time spreading the word about. And so we're hoping through this certification, we can point out and help to support amazing organizations doing work in all 3 of these areas. And so we'd love to hear from you if your school's interested in being involved, and also if you know of some great resources in any of these value areas that you think we should include as part of the certification. So I invite you to have a look at the site, to go ahead and vote and keep contributing your thoughts and ideas. And I'm hoping that some of you might be interested in helping us build this network. And it won't just be a static network or a static process. We're actually going to be building an open certification process where schools won't just submit their evidence in a binder that gets filled on a shelf somewhere, but we're going to be creating an online kind of repository for each indicator. So you'll be able to go into something like global citizenship. One of the indicators might be create a sister school partnership to collaborate with. That was actually one submitted by someone else. And we're hoping to catalog videos, photos, stories, and showcasing the great practices of schools around the world in all of these areas so that we can create a community of practice that's a living laboratory for innovation in these areas, and also hopefully to inspire the rest of the schools in the world that may not be adopting these values to get there with the ultimate goal of driving student voice. So I'd love to have some of your questions and continue the conversation with you both online for the next 15 minutes, but also offline for the rest of in the coming months. But I wanted to close with this question that we asked ourselves quite a lot when we were starting Taking It Global. And we had an executive from Starbucks hear us at a conference and help us put it on their cup a few years back. And I think this is really a question that we're all trying to answer in our schools and in our communities. I think we all wonder if young people were actively engaged in all aspects of society and thought of themselves as community leaders, problem solvers, role models, mentors, and key stakeholders, how would the world change? And I really am excited to be working with all of you and hope to work with all of you on our journey to find out. So thanks so much for having me today. And I'm just going to jump over to Twitter and see if we have any questions that I can